I wonder if our dear netizens can listen to the wild goose's voice from our camera. We will also zoom in a little bit. There are really lots of wild goose there, around 5,000 to 6,000. We note that cranes and wild goose are quite far away for observation. How can we count the number of them? Usually we will divide them into regions and then use a long-range telescope or long-range camera to zoom in. We will have one observer on site. And sometimes the observer would also need to count the number from left to right and then from right to left, and then get the mean of the count numbers. I know that when you are counting a large number, it is very possible to count wrongly. Yeah, I understand, because there is such a big number of them. As you count more often, you will get more skilled. When the cranes are flying in the sky, you can divide them into groups and groups and then have a basic estimation of the number. Okay, we will move the telescope, try to get a larger view. As what you just said, we will move from left to right and then from right to left to count the number. It is a little bit unclear with the camera on. You can do it like me. You can even see some swarm further away. There are around 30 swans. The bird that's closest to us is the white crane, and then further is the swan. The current flying species is wild goose. Crane's flying gesture is very delicate, very gracefully, whereas wild goose flies like a gentleman. The sound that it flies with its wings, it's really big, and sometimes it can blow your mind with its flying gesture in groups. Also, when the white crane flying up, you can hear very exact how it vibrate the wing in the air. We will leave the telescope on the ground and try to find the best perspective. We're currently standing here, and it is not that windy to stand right here. Otherwise, elsewhere it's quite windy. Let's move up a little bit. White crane is a relatively large bird. It usually breeds and lives in a shallow wetland. When you see them afar, you can see they are quite white. That does not mean that white crane does not have any other color in its feather. When it fly up in the sky, you can see some black area in their wings. However, when they are not flying, they just stand put. From afar, you cannot see the dark area. At the point of their wing, it is a little bit black. And when they stand put, the white feather would cover the dark area, so you cannot see the dark point. Crane and wild goose as well as egret are all very white. Crane species has a characteristic that is all kinds of cranes have kind of reddish color. Some of them are in the head and around the neck and even on the top of the head. For example, red-crowned crane does not have red feather, but that is a very blood-nerved, intensive area. And sometimes when they try to intimidate rivals, this area will get even more red. That is just like us human beings. When we get more aggressive, our face will get red. Common crane also have a red area in the head. And white crane will have some red face. Actually, the dark point in the wing plus the red-necked or red-headed color, the combination is very beautiful. During this time being, we use long-range camera to observe the crane. Now we are going to play a video and try to give you more details about cranes. We know that white crane is a migratory bird. It usually wintering in our country, and then in the summertime it will fly back to Siberia area. Since this is a very long distance of flight, it will stop and in some rest site and have some food over there. In today's program, we will talk about what kind of rest habits will they have and what kind of food will they eat during the in the wet rest site. We are currently at Momoge wetland, and the reason why this wetland can attract white crane is because of the water environment as well as the food here. White crane usually eat on vegetables, such as the root of the grass. It will feed on 3 kinds of grass roots. When the grass root is rarely, it's not that easy to acquire, it will also feed on the other type of grass, even corns. For example, the crops left on the ground by the farmer will also attract white crane. You can see that when the white crane is standing, it's very tall, and when the white crane is dipping inside the water, it is actually looking for food. Usually it will dip down 3 to 5 centimeters. When the white crane is searching for food, it has to dip down and broke the mud so to get the food under the mud. It must have a very sensitive beak. I also observed some birds a few months ago, and according to some experts of bird, they mentioned that white crane would wintering in other area and summering in the other area. Since the total migration distance is around 2,000 kilometers, this kind of traveling will make the white crane get thinner and lose weight. And when they stop on rest site, they will gain weight immediately. Yes, we also experience this kind of phenomena. Due to long distance of travel, white crane can lose weight significantly. And after the white crane has been resting and getting food in the rest site for around a week, it will gain weight and the feather will get even more beautiful. It needs a period of time to get rest. Is that white crane flying up? Yes. There are around 20 white cranes flying up. This is just a short distance flight. And they are resting. Yeah, I understand. If I stand put in one position, I would also prefer to walk around. Also, in a family, if the parents' white crane is flying up, then the kids would fly up. Okay, there is a group of white crane flying toward my left hand. You can see the flying gesture of the white crane is very graceful. If you use long-range camera, you can see that 500 meters away from us, there are a lot of birds. This is the peak time for birds migrating. All kinds of migratory birds are migrating toward here. The earth slope is very slippery. Now there are 7 to 8 white cranes flying a fur. The white land covers a large area. In the springtime, it is not the best time to observe white cranes because the feather of them is yellowish, and also the plants are yellowish. However, by the time of the end of summer, then you will see more colorful plantation, some bright green, bright yellow, and bright red. We will still need to adjust the lens of the camera. When it's done, we will have a detailed look of the crane and also the swan. Swan is a national level conserved animal. Here there are a lot of the white swan covers the largest number, and sometimes they would stop around 20 days in this rest site. Big swan prefer to stay and search food in a wide ground. You can even see some hard or solid mud here. What's the ingredient in it? You can see that this kind of mud is whitish because there are some sodium inside it. Soda. It's soda-based mud. This soda-based mud, is it very good for the growth of plantations? We know a kind of grass usually grow in soda-based mud. And judging from the surface, we can see that that kind of grass is preferring soda-based mud. In some fertile soils, you cannot even see this kind of grass. As you can see, the white crane over there, it's moving out their wings. And you can even see some wild goose in the 1 o'clock direction. There are currently around 1,000 wild goose flying, and also a few number of big swans. Okay, now I can see the biggest one is the big swan, because its white span is very long. You can also see some egret in this area. However, its feeding habit is very different from white crane. If you see from their flying gesture, egret will curve its neck. For example, however, the swan and crane will straighten up their neck while they're flying. By this feature, you can differentiate egret from white crane and the swan. We know this is a national level nature reserve. There are all kinds of endangered species, and they have different habits. That's why we prepared a video for you to understand their different feeding habit and also their flying habit as well as their body features. Before you look at this video, you can try to think about the knowledges we talk about, and then after the video, we will unveil the answers to those questions. We mentioned white swan, which will also be shown in the video. What kind of other species are breeding here? This is there has a large number of migratory birds in this area. Firstly, let's look at the largest migratory bird. It has a height of 90 centimeters, and there is a smallest migratory bird. It is not just small, it has some kind of special skills when it's flying. And then let's see big swan. Big swan can fly very high. Actually, it's the highest, as high as to 9,000 meters. Sometimes they can even conquer the Everest. And another migratory bird from the North Polar Circle can travel the longest distance. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yu Mongyang with CGTN. Currently, we are live streaming on various platforms, including CGTN, to talk about that the observation of white crane. And we are currently at a wetland where there are about 1,700 white cranes breeding here. Just now, we observed around 300 to 400 white cranes in the 1 to 2 o'clock directions from where we stand. And from the telescope, we can see that these white cranes are mainly looking for food. Searching for food is very crucial for their livelihood. And we understand that they are basically looking for grass roots underground. Can we have a more visualized view of this white crane searching for food? We know that in this wetland, let's firstly walk forward and try to find those root grass. This water is quite shallow, isn't it? Is there any marsh place around here? Yes. In the winter time, this place will not look like this. There will be a lot more grass, and the view will be much more beautiful. And when the wind blows, and the grass will sway along with the wind. However, there is a kind of grass that we cannot see right now. Because in the winter and spring times, is it the grass that we are talking about? No, not that one. You can see that the leaf rotted in the surface of the water. And we are currently looking at other grass. Actually, this is the river grass that we are talking about, and it's very complete. When you squeeze it, you can see that it is a not well grown grass, and this one has already got its sprout. Yeah, now I see in the springtime all of the grass will sprout. If you do not take it out from the water, you won't be able to see it. And in the winter time, the root will grow much more into clusters. If this sprout grow up, the whole grass will get much bigger. Sometimes to even several meters high. The root of it is flattened. Later we will put it back, and it will grow back into the mud. Just insert it inside the mud. We should remember this location and come back in the summertime, then we can see how it will look when it grows up. This is an area where the grass will grow very intensively. That is also the reason why white cranes are all coming to this area. it is all because of the grass, the meadow rush. Since we're in the wild outside area, the reception network communication is not that stable. We wish that in the future our 5-generation network will be much more stable. What kind of influence will this windy climate have on the white crane? If the weather gets too windy, then the white crane won't be able to fly up north. In the north, for example, in May, the white crane would fly up to the Siberia area, and the wind direction would turn from north to south. Now we're coming back to the first observation station. Is there any different now? Have some white crane left? No, actually there are even more white cranes, 100 to 200 more. Just when we went away from this spot, there were some companies of the white crane coming here. Each year, there are 95% of the white cranes around the world coming here. And the government also attached great importance to the conservation of this nature reserve. There is no industrial pollution and no air pollution, no water pollution. It can be seen as a white-star hotel for the white crane. Because in this area, the white crane can feed on a lot of food. They will never get hungry and they can rest very well. They usually breed in this area in the summertime and left this area in the autumn. Yes, to understand whether an area is well protected, we should always observe whether the animals here are living well. We know that white crane is an endangered species. It has a very high requirement on the breeding area. There are a lot of parameters of the wetland that has to meet the demand of the white crane. It has to have a large area and has a lot of food. For a long time, white crane choose this area to be the breeding area. We're very honored. However, there is a climatary change in this area. We have seen much less raindrop now. Yes, that's true. Over the 2 to 3 years, there are less raindrop, and we are even entering into a drought stage. The water supply mainly come from the raindrop, and then second is from the upstream of the Alonto River. And in the 1 to 2 years in the future, the water supply of the river is not that sufficient. That will also harm the migration of the white crane. If this area gets drier, then it will not be that suitable for the white crane to breed. As we mentioned that there are 1 to 200 more of white cranes coming here just when we were having this conversation. We know that the white crane has to travel thousands of kilometers distance during the migration stage. And how can they differentiate the directions, especially for the child white cranes? This is a question that I'm very interested in. I'm sure our netizens are very interested in as well. The migratory bird. Regarding to the orientation of direction of the migration birds, there are a lot of theories in the scientific circle. Many years ago, we estimate that the orientation of migratory bird has a lot to do with the magnetic field of the Earth. When we add a magnet on the head of the migratory bird, they will not be able to differentiate direction. And later we conduct an experience on the migratory bird. We realized that there is a special pineal body feature inside the migratory bird, and they will relate to the magnetic field of the Earth so that they can be able to differentiate the direction. Currently, regarding the migration of migratory bird, there is not a unified theory in the scientific circle. Welcome back to the live streaming. We are currently on the car heading to the next observation spot. The weather is pretty good today. However, traveling on the road is a bit bumpy. We have a very large view of the wetland. You can see that in not far away there is some windmill, because this is a windy place. We can make the full use of the wind. White crane will usually spend 60 to 70 days rest, but not in just one spot, but in several spots. This is also good for the whole species of white crane. And today we have invited Pan Shengyu, a scientist from this nature reserve. Now we are heading to the next observation spot. And in the wetland on both sides, there are a lot of soda grass. Now they are a little bit black colored. However, in a few months later, it will become red. The soda grass also is very conducive for white crane, because white crane can also feed on it. If you don't remind me, I would consider this dark or black area as a burned area. If you want to stop, you can have a look or a further observation of the typology. We will stop now. This is the common seaweed herb. Even in the autumn time, it will not grow very high. And there are a lot of common seaweed, herb here, and you can see a lot of seeds of it. And white crane can also feed on the seed as well. Over there, that is the breeding area for big swan. However, we cannot see them because they are too far away. You can only see them from the telescope, but they are still very blurry. This is the drought period of the wetland. Otherwise, the water surface would be even higher. The wetland has drought period and wet period, and it also provides food to the migratory birds, even in the drought period, because the nature has its own adjustment circle. Since it is spring season, we know that the next station for white crane is Siberia, and that is the breeding area for them. They will start a family over there. So starting from here, white cranes will court for their significant part. Now we will play a video that can show you the courting, the courting process of white crane that represents their love. Usually, if a white crane wants to court for its significant part, then the male white crane will dance, and then the female white crane will dance back. You can see the dancing interaction between them, and even you can see the chemistry between them. That's very similar to human beings, because you have to express your emotion or affection. And the white crane's dancing has different types. Sometimes it represents excitement, and sometimes it represents joy. The signal of this live streaming is not that stable because we are outside in the nature. Just now we mentioned that sometimes the dancing of the white crane gets very excited. Now we'll have a full screen of the white crane dancing to see what kind of other dance type or other kind of gestures for the white crane to court for their significant part. Yes, the voice or the of the white crane has a lot of types. Sometimes when the kid white crane yearning for food, it will sound in a very specific way. Even when the white crane groups cry or wow together, then it means a warning. And when some white crane flying up in the sky and then send out a specific cry to the ground white crane, then it means following us flying up in the sky. There is a good way to differentiate child crane with the adult crane. That is to observe the color of the feather. Child crane has gray feather, and when they grow up into adult, the feather will get white. Also, in the neck area, you can see some yellowish areas. And we specifically ask about the yellowish spots. And the yellowish spot means that the white crane is decorating itself so to attract more cranes of the opposite sex. White crane will use the natural color from the nature, for example, the mud or even the flower, to decorate on its body, so that to attract the female white cranes. And when you see a white crane decorating itself, you can see it's ready to set up a family. Since the white cranes are going to breed in the Siberian area, then you will see in the autumn season this year, in the autumn season, the child white crane will fly with the mother white crane back to this area. You just said white crane is very loyal with regard to love. Yes. As you can observe that in a wild white crane family, the white crane parents will always stay beside the child cranes. They are very responsible to their kids, not only just loyal to each other. And the couple cranes will always stay together no matter they're resting or searching for food. You can see the connection between them. Sometimes white crane will have an only child, and sometimes they will have one or more. In the case of more kids, the parent white cranes will have more pressure for the upraising of the kids. Usually, in a family of white cranes, they will have 2 kids. And in this 4-member family group, the parent white cranes will have a lot of pressure to feed the kids. And you can even see a unique feature of the only child of white crane, because only child will have a darker feather. So the parent white crane will hold the responsibility of feeding the kids. When the kids are not grown up, they will have to give food to the kids. And in the nature, it is very difficult to bring up 2 kids. Sometimes the nest of the white cranes of each family will scatter in around 1 to 20 kilometers. it is not easy for the kid white crane to grow up. Also, for the 1,000 kilometers of migration, white cranes also face a lot of risks and threats. Yes, it will also face some natural disasters. And it is not that easy when faced with natural disasters or windy climate for them to get food. Sometimes other species of bird will steal their food, and long distance of travel will require a lot of energy. We know that migratory birds die a lot during the long distance of migration. So we can see that the migration travel for the white crane is like a lifetime travel. The white crane can face with a lot of risk and threats, and sometimes they would just die during the trip. For white crane, it will travel around 5,000 kilometers in a single trip, so the round trip will be 10,000 kilometers. They will also have to select a rest site during the migration phase. And you would also need to think about the breeding phase and also the feathering phase. In this such big area of wetland, you can see that the wetland covers a large area that is around 80,000 hectares. In this such big area of wetland, there must be a lot of water birds living. And the water birds will decide to live in a small region together in groups, and they have a strong territory sense. Yes, all birds have a very strong territory sense. For example, magpie has a very strong sense of territory, and they even will have turf wars against each other. You can see that sometimes white cranes will fight with each other. That is all because of their strong sense of territory. And in a fight between each other, it is not that easy for a white crane to get hurt. Yes, that is all because of the strong sense of territory. White cranes can start turf wars very easily, but they won't hurt each other. It is just a kind of gesture to show their strong sense of territory. Because when you span the wing, you can see that it is very different from their gestures when they're standing put. Usually, the white crane looks all white, a whole body white. And only when they are flying up or when they span their wing can you see the darker spot of their body. And we are heading to another observation spot. There are around 1,000 white cranes in that spot. How far away is the next observation spot? It's less than 1 kilometer, but the road is quite bumpy. because this is a very treacherous pathway. It's quite bumpy. It also will interfere with the signal. You can already see the white cranes over there. On the left side, on the river, there are a lot of white cranes. Yeah, but it is too bumpy to see the white cranes clearly. Yes, I do see those white cranes on the river. Okay, let's get off the truck. This is a very ideal spot for observation. You can see white crane. It's flying very gracefully, and according to the record, during the migration of white crane, they can fly up to 7,000 meters height. However, when they are resting on the rest side, they will not fly very high. In the short distance migration, since they need to sometimes rest and search for food, they will fly in a low altitude. And recent years, we have already acquired some statistics and to see what kind of flying height, flying distance, and also the flying spot of these white cranes. If you're interested in this kind of statistics, you can look into it. Currently, we know that the highest distance of the highest altitude of white crane is around 7,000. Yes, last year I also talked with some experts of white crane. They will track white cranes with satellite sensors or GPS locators, so that we can see where they will stop and the flying height as well as the longitude. With regard to the observation of white crane in the nature, what kind of other ways can we do? Now we will play a video to talk about the ways to observe white cranes that include satellite sensors, etc. In the migration phase, by observing the white crane, you can see the species number, migration time, and distance. Firstly, we use radar technology. By this method, you can observe the height, direction, and speed of migratory bird without being compromised by the climate. Currently, the most common way to observe migratory bird is bird banding. You will have different labels put on the birds in one place, and then in another place you can observe these birds when they arrive in the other location. By bird banding, you can acquire information about the migration route, migration rest site, migration range, height, etc. of the migratory birds. The most famous bird banding bird is the North Polar seagull. During the last 80s, we also use satellite tracking technology to group migratory birds. Firstly, we will have a sensor on the ground station and then have a satellite sensor on the bird, and also have a receiver on the satellite. When they receive the signal from the satellite, the signal will transfer to the Earth station so that to acquire information like the geo information, the altitude of the flying of those birds. Currently, satellite tracking is highly used in cranes and wild goose. Compared with bird banding, satellite tracking can track a very large range of bird, and it can cover a long time. Currently, a donor white crane has the longest history of being satellite tracked. During his lifetime, it provided 2,033 days of science data for the scientific circle. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yu Yang with CGTN. Currently, we are live streaming to CGTN, CCTV News, and 4 platforms. And we're currently in the west of Jilin, the Momoge wetland, and we're observing the situations of white crane migration. We have already traveled 20 minutes and have seen around 300 to 400 white cranes. And we traveled from the other spot to this spot. You can see that the environment of this spot is completely different. The typology of this area is more river-oriented. Yes, its water supply and water resources is much more abundant than the other spot. And you can see that in this spot there are a lot of reed. However, white crane is not a big fan of reed. And because it has abundant water resource, white crane can get abundant food. And a difference of this place from the other spot is that white cranes can get very relaxed living habit in this spot. They are now resting and they can get much more food here. Now they are not hungry at all and they're all resting. In this area, there are more duck species, including red-necked duck, water duck, etc. However, the crane groups are in a very comfortable environment. How many cranes are there? Let's count. Because they are shielded by the reed, it is estimated that there are more than 1,000 cranes in this area. This should be the largest region for crane. Yes. In the Mobile Nature Reserve, there are also some wild cranes. That is also around 1,000 cranes. And that nature reserve covers an area of around 14,000 hectares. It can provide completely sufficient food for the crane, no matter in drought or not drought stage. Okay, let's prepare the telescope so that the netizens can also see the white cranes. Far away, you can see some water birds flying, but they are too far away to be seen clearly. In the 60s and 70s of last century,